but I think it's encouraging to see like teams being brave, like Saudi Arabia, and what that allows them to do, allows them to get a bit of pressure on Argentinians, better players, like so by keeping the high line, the midfielders can go and get closer to the more creative players, which they did in the game, put tackles in.
Hello and welcome to Indo World Cup on day 4 of the tournament. My name's Aidan O'Hara, and yesterday we had our first big shock, our first scoreless draw, and what's likely to be the first instance of a player who scored 800 career goals trying to put himself in the shop window at a World Cup tournament. Later we'll hear from Shamrock Rovers defender and Cape Verde international Roberto Lopes, but for now I'm joined from a media centre in Qatar by soccer correspondent with the Irish Independent, Daniel McDonnell. How are things, Dan?
I'm good, Ado. I've been seeing some football, at least. Got to see France and Australia tonight. This was unofficially sort of a scouting mission with Ireland's Euros campaign in mind in March, but probably more importantly for France, the first game of the World Cup campaign. So they did a number on the Aussies, to be fair, who gave it a go. They got ahead, but unlike the Argentina Saudi game, the story of the day really. It just eventually economics and the ability of your players just sort of shone through in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. We might start at the beginning of the day, when usually for us, Saudi Arabia and Argentina, obviously the big shock. Saudi now find themselves top of Group C after Mexico's draw. So what was the vibe there whenever that result came through?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was to personalise it. I mean, I only got into the media centre to pick up my accreditation. I was the only person looking for accreditation in the accreditation centre at the time, because it was halfway through the first half of the game. There was a lot of sort of volunteers and people sitting around cheering for Saudi. But I'll be honest, I checked the score. It was 1-0 Argentina. I was thinking, my decision to not watch this game is not going to be causing me much of an issue here. They're 1-0 up and they're probably going to go and stroll it. So I made my way up to the media centre to watch the second half of the match, and just managed to see all of it. But there was sort of it's very hard to explain what these media centres are like. It's like this one is a particularly big one. It's like an old airport. It's a renovated old airport, so it has that airport terminal vibe, like the really high ceilings and sort of clean floors and just slightly unusual place. And you're in the media centre, and the games are on screens with no commentary. So generally, you just react to crowd noise if something happens. And it must have been the Saudi equaliser. People were like, "Oh, that's a bit of a story," but the second goal, the place. There was just that sense of giddiness of this is the story unfolding. And in classic sort of name-dropping fashion, Tony Cascarino just happened to be come in at the same time and was saying hello, couldn't believe the score, and spent very much the rest of the second half just watching the game with him as the Saudis just threw their body on the line. We watched the game and we spoke about live golf. So there you go. All the burning issues of Saudi at the moment covered, apart from Newcastle.
Absolutely, yeah. To be fair to you, Dan, I mean, you tipped a 4-0 win to Argentina, and I tipped a 5-0 win, so you were a little bit closer than I was.
I'll take that.
Had VAR not been there, we might have been kind of close, but it really does leave them with a bit of a mountain to climb now.
It does, yeah. I mean, I was making this point in a piece for the paper. I mean, this is a nightmare for as much as the Qatar-Saudi relations seem to have improved. You know, there was the Emir of Qatar had a Saudi flag, which is quite significant geopolitically, given the countries have been involved in like a sort of the new Arab Cold War, as they call it, over the blockade in recent times. And as much as like everyone's rowing in behind the Saudi effort, I think for the hosts, like Argentina is the one team that want to stay in this competition for as long as possible, because they've no interest in One Love armband. They've no interest in the sort of the noise that they would say has been generated by the European nations. Their fans have actually travelled, unlike a lot of the other fans who've stayed away. So they're delivering noise and colour around the city and around the stadiums. And a lot of the locals or the neutrals from the vicinity have adopted Argentina too. So, I mean, it's a great upset and all, but it's a bit like these World Cups where the upsets are brilliant, but you don't want all the top teams to go out. And of all the top teams, they don't want to
like
go
an
out.
FA Cup third
Argentina,
round.
yeah, and Argentina is the one they do not want to go out of the competition. So at least that Mexico-Poland draw, um, they're in a situation where it's not as if they're in a Spain-Germany style group or someone else is going to streak into the distance. They're still in control of their destiny, but I don't know. All that tournament talk about the unbeaten record and all of that, it just all looks very flimsy because they were panicking like mad when they were chasing the game.
So Argentina obviously very disappointed with the performance, but it was a defensive masterclass from Saudi Arabia with an offside trap that the old Arsenal team would have been proud of. And earlier I spoke to Pico Lopes to get his verdict on their display. I'm joined by Pico Lopes, Shamrock Rovers defender and Cape Verde international. How are you, Pico?
All good, Aidan. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. You enjoying the World Cup so far?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I have to say, I love the World Cup. I love when it comes round, and especially after today, when you have the shocks that come with it, it's really enjoyable. And you can just see the excitement to whoever you speak to about it. Everyone's just watching it, and it's a great buzz.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from that Saudi Arabia story as the story of the tournament so far. As the defender in you must have enjoyed the backs to the wall ending of the game.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what it's about. Especially when you're going in as an underdog, you know you're gonna have to put your bodies on the line at time. You're gonna need your keeper to make some really big saves, which he did. And yeah, just the overall game management was really impressive. I have to say, you see Argentina on this long unbeaten run, and they knew to be up against the Saudi Arabia, but they dug in and they made some great decisions on the day, and they got the result.
And in your own experience, I mean, what's going through your mind in that situation in a game where, you're hanging on for a big victory or a big point, when you're under the cosh and maybe not even expected to win, it's not just about throwing your body on the line, is it?
No, not at all. I suppose you're trying to stay as calm as possible, even though you're getting probably bombarded left, right, and centre. You're trying to be as calm as you can in the mind and try and make the right decisions. You have to defend and put the foot in at time, but there's also a time to put your foot on the ball and try and make a few passes and try and alleviate the pressure that way. And I thought Saudi Arabia did that well. They managed the game really well. When they got their 2 goals by taking the game to Argentina as well, they attacked at the right moments and then just managing the game, killing time, keeper going down on the ball, and say if you have to make 2 or 3 passes just to alleviate that pressure. I thought they did that really well.
And psychologically, with that kind of the injury time that's when it comes up, like when you're chasing a game, that you always hear it in matches when it's a home team chasing a game and that board goes up. I mean, if it's anything over 4 minutes, the crowd tend to really get into it. From a defensive perspective, when you're trying to hang on, is that something you just got to try and ignore and focus on the next ball, or is it hard to do that when you see that number go up?
Yeah, because to be honest with you, most of the time I don't hear the additional time going up. So it's probably a good thing. I think the best thing is to try and block it out. And as you think the team of this World Cup is, they're not afraid to add time on for substitutions or stoppages. Many of the games have been going to 100+ minutes. So I think it's important to try and block that out. You could be playing, say, well over the allocated 90 minutes. So you just have to think about the next phase, the next pass, my next decision, and hopefully it's the right one. And when the referee blows that whistle, that's when it's time to celebrate, not a second before.
Yeah, and just finally on Saudi Arabia, they had a very, very high line. It was almost sort of old Arsenal style, to try and catch Argentina offside, and it was very, very successful. Again, from your own perspective, playing that high line, would you like to be able to do that in terms of VAR, where you know that you're going to get the right decision if you get your timing right?
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing to it as well. I think now with VAR, you can actually trust the technology, so you can be brave enough in holding that high line. And if it's a tight call, you'll either be bailed out by the technology and VAR, or you have to hold your hands up and say, right, we got that one wrong. But I think it's encouraging to see teams being brave, like Saudi Arabia, and what that allows them to do, allows them to get a bit of pressure on Argentinians, better players, by keeping the high line, the midfielders can go and get closer to the more creative players, which they did in the game, put tackles in. And as you said, the Argentina goal disallowed a really tight offside call, but it was the right one in the end, and it's all down to that line and the unit working together.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine previously that a linesman would have been brave enough to put his flag up 3 times for offside calls.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's probably one of the positives of VAR where you can trust the technology now. It seems to be really clear whether it's offside or not. So in regards to offside, you can back your line and be strong, and you'll come to the right or wrong decision anyway.
That's great, Pico. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll be back after the break.
No problem, Aidan. Thanks very much.
So after the shock of Saudi beating Argentina, we had Denmark and Tunisia 0-0 draw, and then Mexico and Poland with the same scoreline, although Poland left to rue a missed penalty from Robert Lewandowski. On to France and Australia then from last night, a game you were at. For a brief window, it looked like there might be another kind of shock on the cards, but the French class just told in the end.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it's you look at the profile of the Australia squad where they play. They have no player from the top 5 leagues. They have one fella in Germany in the second division, Jackson Irvine. 4 players in Scotland, a couple in the Championship. I mean, Ireland actually probably have a better squad than Australia. And they they started well. 2 lads from the A League, 30-something players in the A League combining. This is a long way removed from Australia when they had sort of Tim Cahill and Harry Kewell and various other sort of accomplished players who'd operated at a high level. And once France equalised, and I was sort of making the point, like you think with these teams that it's it's amazing world class goals that like are the difference. When in reality, it's like second phase of a set piece, a bad mistake. It's just the relentlessness of trying to play them. That eventually the basics. Their ability to do the basics again and again just runs the life out of an inferior side, and that's what happened. Poor old Atkinson playing for a right full with the Mbappe job. Did well for 20 minutes, and then all his nightmares sort of unfolded in front of him.
Yeah, there's a fantastic photograph. I'm not sure if you've seen it by Stephen McCarthy's Sports File with Mbappe lining up and 5 or 6 Aussies in front of him. It's reminiscent of the Maradona and Belgium photograph, but Mbappe was sensational. There was seemed to be an extra gear there where they couldn't live with him.
Yeah, and like the whole crowd feeds off the energy of like that sort of little burst of energy in the stands. I mean, the stands. I mean, I must say, like the ground wasn't remotely close to full. I mean, some of the attendance figures that are being put out there just reminds me of some of the post FAI Vantage Club attendances. To be honest. And it's like, but even still, within that, there was just that buzz when Mbappe got going, and in a weird way, like as much as he was amazing, he was also a little bit sort of hot and cold in aspects of the game. Like he missed a sitter, he tried a couple of things that didn't come off, but he could just get away with it because he's just so superior to Australia. And like there was a couple of times he tried that run and he was cut off at the cross for the 4th goal, but he just makes it look so easy when he does execute it, and that's the that's just the pure and simple scale of the task Australia was facing was just far too big for them.
Yeah, I think Vincent Kompany was on BBC talking about the challenge with Giroud up front as well, where the easy part of marking Olivier Giroud is standing a long way up the pitch because he's as slow as a wet week, as everyone knows. But the problem with that is that leaves a lot of space for Mbappe. So the fear is Mbappe, so people drop back, which means Giroud can be in around the box and scored a couple of goals. And it's remarkable to think that he's now alongside Thierry Henry as France's top goal scorer.
Yeah, 36 as well. I mean, he's 36 years of age. Griezmann 31. Now I know like there's a few players missing, like Benzema, although he's obviously north of 30 as well. There's a few bodies that have dropped out of the squad, but it's still like, I mean, these major tournaments, like, okay, I know there was the last Euros as well, but in terms of World Cups, it's amazing you have these recurring characters who are just there sometimes. It's like Giroud was like a sort of a Miroslav Klose in some respects, a sort of a French version of it, in terms of you find yourself at the start of the tournament going, is he actually still there? And yet there's that certain consistency about them. Although, isn't that whole thing that when France's number 9 scores in a World Cup, they don't win it? So it's some kind of weird.
Yeah, going back to Stefan Guivarch and the likes.
Yeah, per Stefan.
Yeah, he still has a World Cup winners medal to show. Well, it's not much of a pat on the back for us, but I think we both had France to win. We both had Argentina to win. So I'm not quite sure how our predictions are going. We might look at that later in the week, but we'll go into tomorrow's games now, today's games, just for some predictions. So this morning we have Morocco and Croatia in a 10 o'clock game. Do you see any early morning Irish time drama as there was yesterday morning?
Well, I'm hoping there's no early morning drama in actually getting there, because I'm going to that game up in Al Bayt Stadium, which I've now realised. I spent an early part of my trip just chalking down the stadiums and where I'm like, because I've made no absolute plans whatsoever as regards travel, because everyone says, well, it's the size of Wexford or it's the size of Carlow or wherever you want to equate. So you don't need to make any logistical plans to get to these stadiums. But it turns out that of all the stadiums, the Al Bayt Stadium where this game is the nightmare. Like, take the most remote place you can think of getting it, that schoolboy venue in Dublin or something, where you always dreaded the logistics of going there, and that's basically Al Bayt. So hopefully I make it there for the game, and there's no drama involved with that. And then subsequently, like, Croatia seems to be on the upgrade again. Like, Croatia are one of those where they have the older players and that old core that got to the final in 2018, but they've managed to sort of refresh their squad, and they're sort of they're potentially, they haven't regressed in the way that people thought that they might. So I fancy them.
Yeah, I'd be along the same lines. And speaking of an old core, we have Belgium and Canada as the final game of the day. Again, Alphonso Davies is the star of the show for Canada, a young player, doubts about his fitness, but it's difficult to see past a comfortable Belgian victory as well in that game.
Yeah, I mean, Canada have Jonathan David as well, like a mad record of 22 goals and 35 caps, and plays for Lille. Their captain was doing the press conference today. He was 39 years of age, an outfield player. I'm trying to think of his name now. He plays in Turkey, and I thought that was just very uplifting, because it's someone who's roughly of a similar age to you playing in the competition.
Yes,
still outfield.
it is heartening. All right,
there's not actually too many of them left, but like, I mean, the Belgians, I mean, some of them are getting on a bit as well. I mean, they are still relying a bit on, Hazard is still the captain. Vertonghen was there today. It's what, like 35, 36 now. Like, they have sort of, the big issue with Belgium relative to Croatia is that maybe Belgium are still a little bit too reliant on their golden generation, and they haven't refreshed it as much. But in saying that, they are sort of the type of team that I feel like they'll disappoint you in other ways, and they won't disappoint you in terms of the early stage group match. It's more when we come to the crunch later on that you sort of have a slight feeling that they're going to struggle. But I think in the context of this group, I sort of feel like they probably need to get off to a win, because I was at the press conference today, and I believe they had a friendly last week where they didn't play that well, and Martinez was getting a lot of questions about that. So it seems like locally he's under a small bit of pressure. Atiba Hutchinson is that player from Canada. I was looking it up. Okay. February the 8th, 1983, he was born, and still playing in Turkey, still going. Besiktas has been there for like 8 years. So there you go.
There's always a terrible moment when those veteran players that you describe as veterans and they're still a bit younger than you. So speaking of golden generations, and that both Spain and Germany, recent winners of this with the tournaments with their own golden generation, are in action today. I think there's probably less expected of Germany, and the game against Japan this afternoon at 1 o'clock could be a little bit tricky for them.
Yeah, Japan are pretty good. Like, they have a deep enough squad. I think we're seeing a lot of Japanese players. Probably we've seen them at Celtic, but even sort of start to make an impact around the Champions League, and like, the influence is strong. Like, actually, like, I think I might have mentioned this before. Like, I think Japan would have fancied themselves to get out of other groups, maybe not this group, but I think the Asians have restored their pride after we wrote them off yesterday. In very dramatic circumstances. If one Asian team loses heavily, that means they almost lose. Then Saudi have come along to, like, restore the pride of a continent, to shove it up those sort of arrogant Europeans. So
we know never to write off the Germans anyway. So now we can not write off the Asians to go with that.
Or the Asians. So I think Japan, they're more than capable. I just, like, if there's going to be a shock tomorrow, I think it could be Japan really giving Germany a little bit of a scare. Spain, Costa Rica, Costa Rica, always very similar to Ireland in terms of, like, I think it's they've no army. They're always very neutral, I think, Costa Rica, and they had a great World Cup 8 years ago, 2014. They were incredible, but they don't seem to have the same confidence with their ability this time round. So you'd imagine Spain will do a Spain on them and beat them narrowly, but
beat
dominant.
them death by 1,000 cuts type of
Yeah.
operation as the usual. So I think we're in reasonable agreement in terms of our predictions for today.
Do you want to do scores?
The other thing,
we should do the
yeah,
scores.
why not? We'll have a look at scores.
Sure,
We'll go. I might spin through my own predictions then. So I'll go Croatia 2-1, Germany 1-0, Spain 3-1, and Belgium 4-0.
4-0. Okay. Well, that's. I mean, you're going for a free scoring day. I'm going to go 2-1 for Belgium. I'll go for 1-1 in Japan and Germany. 2-0 for Spain. And what have we got? Croatia, Morocco. Sorry. Yeah, Croatia. Mm-hmm. Maybe Croatia to win that by the odd goal as well. Say 2-1 as well.
And in terms of the final prediction for today's pod, we're just wondering, in terms of the 24-hour McDonald's nearby, what the prediction would be for the next meal, or what's coming up.
Well, I don't know.
It piqued some of the interest in our listeners and viewers. So
some colleagues even. I mean, I was easily amused. I mean, I went to a 24-hour McDonald's. It was open. That this is what happened. A medium Big Mac meal with water. Not keep the calorie count down by not having a soft drink. I mean, that's what you do. No, I'm learning about the vagaries of media center food now. It's a different story. Cascarino recommended the media center food. It's like whatever, something like €13 all you can eat job. As ever, always the slight suspicion with this tournament is that they would lay it on thick for the media in terms of, like, give you all the best facilities in the stadium, the media center that you possibly can. Like, there's a virtual cinema where you can watch games. If you're not at a match, you can go into like a virtual cinema and watch the game at another stadium that you're not attending. I haven't availed of it yet, but it's all about the big surround experience and everything. So, as I said, like, it's quite lavish facilities here. So I don't know, 24-hour McDonald's could be replaced by the media center cuisine over a period of time. But doing 2 games tomorrow. I'm trying to get to Belgium, Canada as well. So, to Belgium, Canada. So 2 games in a day is something that I've tried to do a few times in the first couple of days of the tournament. But the only thing I would say is the traffic around stadiums and the logistics of getting in and around stadiums probably show why maybe a lot of people are already talking about maybe sticking with one, because it's not exactly the easiest. While it is a very small place, a lot of the stadiums seem to be located on sort of ring roads, so you're going around like versions of the M50. So it can become a slightly longer day than you might have anticipated.
With food recommended by Tony Cascarino, it's hard to think of a higher recommendation. So between that and your travel plans for tomorrow, I hope everything goes well, and we'll catch up again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.